Hi all, welcome to BIAS Academy, Science and Technology audio notes for prelims and mains, Unit 2, Part 2, that is chapter E-Governance in India, Cybercrime and Policies in India. The topics which we're going to cover are Digital India, Scope, Vision, Approach and Methodology, Cyber Threats and different types of cyber threats. Next is Cybercrime and Cyber Threats in India and the modes of cybercrime. Next, we're going to see the efforts of Government of India to tackle cyber threat. After that, we'll see National Cyber Security Policy 2013. Next is CERT-in, that is Indian Computer Emergency Response Team. After that, finally, we'll see cloud computing, types of cloud computing and uses of cloud computing. Okay, let's go to the first topic, Digital India. And we'll see the scope of Digital India as well. Yesterday we discussed Digital India started in the year 2014. Okay. Digital India is a program to transform India into digitally empowered society and knowledge economy. What is it? To transform into a digitally empowered society and a knowledge economy. The Central Cabinet in August 2014 at the meeting chaired by the Prime Minister approved Digital India program. This program has been envisaged by Department of Electronics and Information Technology. In short, it is called DEITY, D-E-I-T-Y. The National E-Governance Plan, approved in 2006, has made steady progress through mission mode projects and a core ICT projects. But great thrust is required to ensure effective progress in electronics manufacturing and e-governance in the country. So, the Digital India had a vision which provides the intensified impetus for further momentum and progress for the initiative, and this would promote inclusive growth that covers electronic services, products, devices, manufacturing, job opportunities as well. The vision of Digital India aims to transform India into a digitally empowered society and knowledge economy. The program will be implemented in phases from 2014 till 2018. This program is transformational in nature and would ensure the government services are available to citizens electronically. It will also bring in public accountability through mandated delivery of government services electronically, a unique ID and an e-Praman based on authentic and standard-based interoperable and integrated government applications and databases will be provided. If you look at, there are 9 pillars of Digital India, that is broad highways, e-governance, reforming government through technology, electronics manufacturing, target net zero imports. The fourth one is universal access to mobile connectivity. 5 is e-Kranti, that is electronic delivery of services. 6 is IT for jobs. 7 public interest access program. 8 information for all. 9 early harvest programs. These are the 9 pillars of Digital India. Okay, what is the scope? Let's look at the scope of this program. Number 1 is to prepare India for future, for a knowledge future. Next is, it's a transformative so that it will utilize Indian talent plus IT. That is, IT plus IT is equal to IT. What does it mean? First, IT stands for Indian talent. Second, IT abbreviates for information technology. So, Indian talent plus information technology is equal to IT. What is this? This is India for tomorrow, India tomorrow. IT plus IT is equal to IT, that is India tomorrow. The third scope is making technology central to enable change. Fourth is, on being an umbrella program covering many departments, the Digital India will pull up together many existing schemes which would be restructured, reprogressed and implemented in a synchronized manner. The common branding of the programs as Digital India highlights their transformative impact. Okay, now let's look at the vision of the Digital India. The vision areas there are around 3 vision areas. Let's look at them. The first one is infrastructure as utility to every citizen. So how this can be achieved so that every citizen can use or utilize the infrastructure. The first objective vision is infrastructure as utility to every citizen. So this can be achieved by having, number 1, having an high-speed internet as a core utility, when it should be made available in all Gram Panchayats. Cradle to grave digital identity like unique, lifelong, online, authenticable identity should be there from cradle to grave. Then mobile phone and bank account would be enabled participation in digital and financial space at an individual level. Easy access to common service centers within the locality. Shareable private space on public cloud. Safe and secure cyberspace in the country. So what is the second vision? Governance and services on demand. So how can the government achieve this? By providing seamlessly integration across departments or jurisdictions to provide easy and single window access to all persons. And then government services should be available in real time from online and mobile platforms. All citizen entitlements to be available on cloud to ensure easy access. Government services digitally transformed for improving ease of doing business. Making financial transactions above threshold electronic and cashless. So remember cashless. Leveraging GIS, that is information systems, for decision support system and development. The third vision is digital empowerment of citizens. So how can this vision be achieved? How can any citizen, you and me, can be empowered? One is providing universal digital literacy. Next is all digital resources should be universally accessible. All government documents, certificates be available on cloud. Availability of digital resources, services in an Indian language, most important. Collaborative digital platforms for participative governance. Portability of all entitlements for individuals through the cloud. So now let's look at the 9 pillars of Digital India. Digital India aims to provide the much needed thrust to 9 pillars of growth area. What does it do? It gives focus on these 9 pillars, on these 9 areas. So one is broadband highways, that is internet highways. Number 2 is universal access to mobile connectivity. 3, public internet access program. 4, e-governance, reforming government through technology. 5, e-Kranti, that is electronic delivery of services. 6, information to all. 7, electronics manufacturing, IT for jobs. 9, early harvest programs. Okay, now let's look at the approach and methodology of Digital India program. The central ministries and departments as well as state governments have overall responsibility for implementation of various mission mode and other projects under Digital India. Considering the need for overall aggregation and integration at national level, it is considered appropriate to implement Digital India as a program with well-defined roles and responsibilities of each agency. Number 1, ministries, departments, states would fully leverage the common and support ICT infrastructure established by the Government of India. Simple, they would use the ICT infrastructure, any ministry, department or state. Number 2, the existing ongoing e-governance initiatives would be revamped to align them with the principles of Digital India. Scope enhancement, process re-engineering, use of integrated and interoperable systems, and deployment of emergency technologies like cloud, mobile would be undertaken to enhance delivery of government services to citizens. Now, what does it mean is, simply for example, if any state government or any other governments are implementing a program, so if it falls under Digital India, they're going to revamp it, re-engineer it, and deploy the new emerging technology. So next, the third approach is, or the methodology, states would be given flexibility to identify for inclusion additional state-specific projects which are relevant for socio-economic development. State governments have a choice to add new state-specific projects. Fourth methodology is e-governance would be promoted through centralized initiative to the extent necessary to ensure citizen-centric services are fulfilled. Fifth approach is success would be identified and the replication promoted proactively. So if any program is successful in a particular area or in a pilot project, it's going to be replicated pan-India or wherever necessary. Sixth one, public-private partnerships would be preferred wherever feasible. Seventh, adoption of unique ID would be promoted to facilitate identification, authentication and delivery of benefits. Eighth, restructuring of NIC. What is NIC? National Informatics Center. Where is it? Reply in the comments below. Restructuring of NIC would be undertaken to strengthen the IT support to all government departments at the center and state level. 9. The position of chief information officers would be created in at least 10 key ministries so that various e-government projects could be designed, developed, implemented faster. The 10th methodology or approach of Digital India program is DIT would create. What is DIT? Department of? I know you know it. Good. DIT would create necessary senior positions within the department for managing the program. So what would do? It would create senior positions within the department for managing the particular program. Okay, let's recap what we have seen. We have started with Digital India. This program is to transform India into digitally empowered society and a knowledge economy. Remember this: digitally empowered society and knowledge economy. Simple. Every citizen will be digitally empowered and have a digital knowledge. And then economy will be based on knowledge economy. Brilliant. When was it launched? August 2014. Excellent. Okay. What is the overall scope? To prepare India for knowledge future. IT plus on being transformative, that is to realize IT plus IT is equal to IT, that is Indian talent plus information technology is equal to India tomorrow. 3. Making technology central to enabling change. And the 4th scope is covering many departments as much as possible which have the similar projects. Okay, what is the vision? We have seen the vision areas of Digital India. We have seen 3 areas. The first one is infrastructure as utility to every citizen. Governance, second one is governance and services on demand. Number 3 is digital empowerment of citizens. Under infrastructure as utility to every citizen, how it can be achieved? By providing high-speed internet to every Gram Panchayat, having digital identity from cradle to grave, mobile phone and banking digitally, easy access to common service centers, sharing private space on a public cloud, and safe and secure cyberspace. And the second vision is governance and services on demand. How it can be achieved? Integration of all departments and jurisdictions, government services being available in real time, all citizens services or entitlements should be available on cloud, government services must be transformed digitally, making financial transactions electronic or cashless, in leveraging the information systems for decision making. The third vision is digital empowerment of citizens. This can be achieved by providing universal digital literacy and making all digital resources available to all. All documents and certificates should be available on cloud. Availability of digital services or resources in an Indian language. Collaborative and digital platforms for participative governance. And then we have seen 9 pillars of Digital India. 9 pillars, remember? It might be helpful for your prelims and mains. So for the first pillar is what? How will you have Digital India? If you have internet, that is broadband. How can you achieve it? Through broadband highways. Remember broadband highways. The second one is universal access to mobile connectivity. Okay, if you have mobile broadband highways and people don't use it, then how would you achieve Digital India? So for that you have universal access to mobile connectivity. Next is public internet access program. After that, so now we have broadband highways, we have everybody has access to mobile connectivity, and then there are internet access programs as well. So after that comes an e-governance, that is reforming government through technology. And then once the government services are reformed through technology, then we have to deliver, that is electronic delivery, e-Kranti. So till now we have seen broadband highways. Number 2 is universal access to mobile connectivity. Number 3 is public internet access program. And then 4th is e-governance. And 5th is e-Kranti. 6th is information to all. Every citizen will have access to all the information. 7. Electronics manufacturing, IT jobs, and early harvest programs. 9 pillars. After e-Kranti we have seen information to all. So everybody has information. Then what they need? Computers, mobiles, all the satellites, all these things. So electronics manufacturing, and then IT jobs, and the last one is early harvest programs. So these are the 9 pillars. Let's recap. Broadband highways, universal access to mobile connectivity. Number 3, public internet access program. Number 4, e-governance. Number 5, e-Kranti. Number 6, information for all. 7, electronics manufacturing. 8, IT jobs. 9, early harvest programs. And next we have seen approach and methodology for Digital India program. There are 10 approaches or 10 methodologies. First one is ministries, departments, states would fully leverage the common information communications infrastructure established by the Government of India. Number 2, ongoing e-governance programs would be revamped and realigned with the principles of Digital India. Number 3, states would be given flexibility to identify inclusion of additional state-specific projects for socio-economic needs. Number 4, e-governance would be promoted through centralized initiative to ensure citizen-centric services orientation. Number 5, success would be identified. If any project is successful, it will be replicated proactively. Number 6, public-private partnership would be preferred wherever feasible. Number 7, adoption of unique ID would be promoted to facilitate identification, authentication, and delivery of benefits. Number 8, restructuring of NIC, National Informatics Center, which is in Delhi. Number 9, position of Chief Information Officers would be created at least for 10 key ministries, so that projects, e-governance projects could be designed, developed, and implemented faster. And then Department of Electronics and Information Technology, that is DITI, would create necessary senior positions within the department for managing the program. Now let's go to the next topic: cyber threat and different types of cyber threats. Cyber threat can be defined as any threat to different types of communication through cyberspace. Steal confidential information from any government department or any individual. Okay, so cyber threats can be divided into following four types based on nature and motive. Number 1 is cyber warfare. Number 2 is cyber crime. Number 3, cyber terrorism. Number 4, cyber espionage. Okay, let's look at cyber warfare. Cyber warfare is an attack on information system of a country for disrupting into the critical infrastructure. A state may be involved in cyber warfare against other states, not only directly but mostly through non-state actors like hackers. These days we see many hackers who hack government websites. They have hacked the UPSC website as well. And why do they attack government websites? Because it's a soft target. Many people visit and people trust those websites, and they download content, so it's easy for hackers to hack them. Attack of North Korea and Sony Entertainment was a very good example for cyber warfare. If you remember, it happened a couple of years back. The second one is cybercrime. Cybercrime can be defined as a criminal activity and the cyberspace with relation to identity theft, fraudulent financial transactions. So the losses due to cybercrime are running to billions of dollars worldwide. The third is cyber terrorism. Terrorist attacks activities carried out on cyberspace are called cyber terrorism. So there is a difference between cyber warfare and cyber terrorism. The terrorist activities carried out in cyberspace are called cyber terrorism. The cyberspace has been used to plan terrorist attack, treatment of sympathizers, and for communication between different places to realize, and also you have to make sure that planning the attacks, all these things. The terrorists have been known to use cyberspace for command, communication, control, propaganda, recruitment, training, funding, and other purposes as well. The fourth type of cybercrime is cyber espionage. It is the method of using cyberspace to extract information related to reports of countries, organizations, intellectual property from websites, networks of government and private enterprises, I think so. There are many movies on cyber espionage. One is Salman Khan's movie. I remember there was one company of Madhur Bhandarkar. I remember. Employ the kind of movies which are based on cyber espionage. Okay. Now let's go to the next topic: cyber crimes in India. According to Internet Security Threat Report by Symantec India, third most vulnerable country in terms of risk of cyber threats such as malware, spam, ransomware. Yeah. In 2017, 5% of global threats detected were in India, slightly less than 5.11% in 2016. US, which is at 26%, was mostly vulnerable to such attacks, followed by China 10%. Third is us, that is 5%. Or let's say now it would be 6%. The global threat ranking is based on 8 metrics like malware, spam, phishing, bots, network attacks, web attacks, ransomware, crypto miners. As per the report, India continues to be the second most impacted by spam and bots, third most impacted by network attacks, and fourth most impacted by ransomware. The report also pointed out that with the threat landscape becoming more diverse, attackers are working harder to discover new avenues to attack and cover the tracks while doing so. According to National Crime Records Bureau, that is NCRB, there were about 12,317 cyber crime cases in 2016. This is a 6% rise compared to 2015. Uttar Pradesh with 2,639 cases reported highest under cyber crime cases, that is around 21.4%, followed by Maharashtra, which is at 19% or 2,380 cases, and Karnataka with 8.9%, that is 1,100 cases. However, experts say about 90% of cybercrime goes unreported. Okay, what are the cyber threat challenges to India and possible solutions for it? India is highly vulnerable to cyber espionage. There is a phenomenal increase in cyberspace and cyber espionage by corporates, governments, hostile governments to steal state secrets, corporate information, intellectual property, or military superiority. Cyber attackers are being more organized in the world, which is a great challenge to India. Many hackers have significant funding. Cybercrime will cost the world 6 trillion by 2021. Cybercrime is going to multiply. Hackers may attack government websites, are attacking government websites. India is ranked third after US and China in terms of cybercrime incidents. Cyber criminals can steal personal information, data from private or government organizations, disrupt services, cripple the financial system, endanger national security. Cyber attacks can take multiple forms like terror attacks, identity theft, circulation of offensive content, online sexual abuse, online scams, online hate crimes. Cybersecurity is one of the important national security challenges that countries face all over the world. Cybersecurity attacks have wide threats which can compromise power grids, impact and cripple financial institutions, leakage of sensitive information. There is a need to have both speed and agility to tackle cybercrime. To stay ahead of the attackers, one has to adjust and improve, so technology has to constantly evolve and stay ahead. But have to admit that government does not have adequate in-house capability or expertise or internet strength. Hence, partnership with private sector with the academy is utmost important for India to tackle the challenges of cyber threat. Now, let's go to the next topic, the modes of cybercrime. There are various types of cybercrime which are presently operational in the world. The most important of them, which have turned extremely dangerous, are phishing, malware, email spam, bots, that is internet robots. Fifth one is network attack. 6, ransomware. 7, crypto mining malware. Okay, let's understand what are these. What is phishing? Phishing is an attack, not Phishing, it's Phishing. Phishing. It's an attack is the practice of sending emails that appear to be from trusted sources with the goal of gaining personal information or influencing users to do something. Example, attack on Union Bank of India. The second mode of cybercrime is malware or malicious software. Is a program or a file that is harmful to a computer user. Malware includes computer viruses, worms, Trojan horse, spyware. Example, D-Track spyware attack on Kudankulam reactor. D-Track spyware attack on Kudankulam reactor. The next is email spam. I know we are all subject to this. You get a lot of junk. It's also known as junk email. Is unsolicited bulk messages sent through email. The use of spam has been growing in popularity since the early 90s. The fourth one is bots or internet robots, which are quite popular these days. These are known as spiders, crawlers, web bots. While they are used to perform repetitive jobs such as indexing a search engine means Google, Binge, could be, like that. There are many more. So they index the search engines, and they often come in the form of malware. Malware bots are used to gain total control over the computer. The fifth one is a network attack. Is a method, process, or a means used to maliciously attempt to compromise network security. There are a number of reasons that individuals who want to attack corporate networks. Number 6 is ransomware. Is an emerging form of malware that locks the user out of their files or the device, then demands an anonymous online payment to restore access. Example, WannaCry, and then Petya ransomware. Google the WannaCry, it's a good story. The next one is crypto mining malware. Cryptocurrency mining malware, or simply cryptojacking, is a relative new term that refers to software programs and malware components developed to take over the computer resources and use them for cryptocurrency mining without the user's permission. Okay, let's recap what we have seen till now. We have seen cyber threat, types of cyber threat, the rate of cybercrime in India, cyber threat challenges to India, and then important modes of cybercrime. So what is a cyber threat? Any threat to different types of communication through cyberspace, which steals the confidential information from any government, department, or individual. One, we have seen cyber warfare. It's an attack on information systems of a country. Next, we have seen example is we have seen North Korea on Sony Entertainment. Next is cybercrime, loss of identity or fraudulent financial transactions. Next is cyber terrorism. Fourth one is cyber espionage. After that, we have seen the levels of cyber threat or the rate of cybercrime in India, which is at 6% currently. In UP is the highest in India, which ranks around 2000, which has around 2,639 cases. That is 21.4%. India stands third after USA and China coming to cyber attacks, which is not something we should be proud of, because we are vulnerable. So for this, government has to collaborate with private sectors or with academy to overcome these challenges. And then government websites are soft targets. So after that, we have seen important modes of cybercrime, that is phishing. Phishing is practical of sending emails through that appear to be coming from a trusted source to gain your personal information or to influence you to do something. Next, we have seen malware. After that, email spam, internet bots, a network attack, ransomware, and crypto mining. So now let's go to the next topic: efforts of Government of India to tackle cyber threat in the country. Considering the increased chances of cyber threats in India, the National Cyber Security Policy 2013 was put in place. Its aim to build a secure, resilient cyberspace for citizens, businesses, and government. How? By way of actions to protect information and information infrastructure in cyberspace, build capabilities. A number of initiatives have been taken towards securing cybersecurity space. These initiatives have focused on issues such as cybersecurity threats perception, threats to critical information infrastructure and national security, protection of internet critical information infrastructure, adoption of relevant security technologies, information security awareness, training and research. National Crime Coordination Center, that is NCCC, is being set up with an aim to generate cybersecurity situational awareness and to anticipate and prepare for cyber attacks. NCC, that is National Cyber Coordination Center, will aggregate cyber threats related to information from various identified sources. Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, that is CERT, in implementing a botnet cleaning and a malware analysis center for detection of compromised systems in India and to notify, enable cleaning, securing systems of end users and to prevent further malware infection. This project is being implemented in close coordination and collaboration with internet service providers and industry. Okay, next let's look at the National Cyber Security Policy 2013, which is important. The National Cyber Security Policy is a policy framework by Department of Electronics and Information Technology launched in 2013. The vision is to build a secure and a resilient cyberspace for citizens, business and government. The mission is to protect information and information infrastructure in cyberspace, build capabilities to prevent and respond to cyber threats, reduce vulnerabilities and minimize damage from cyber incidents through a combination of institutional structures, people, process, technology and cooperation. So, what are the objectives of National Cyber Security Policy? To create a secure cyber ecosystem in the country to generate adequate trust and confidence in IT systems and transactions in cyberspace, thereby enhance adoption of IT in all sectors of the economy. Number 2, create an assurance framework for design of security policies and promotion and enabling actions of compliance to global security, and practicing best practices by way of conformity assessment, product, process, technology and people. 3 is to strengthen regulatory framework for ensuring a secure cyberspace ecosystem. 4th objective is to enhance and create national and sectoral level 24/7 mechanism for obtaining strategic information regarding threats to ICT infrastructure, creating scenarios for response, resolution and crisis management through effective predictive, preventive and protective response. 5th objective is to enhance protection and resilience of national critical information infrastructure by operating 24/7 national critical information infrastructure. We spoke about National Cyber Security Policy 2013. The objectives are to create a cyber ecosystem which we can trust and which will build confidence in IT systems. And the second objective is to create an assurance framework for design of security policies and promotion of enabling actions. Number 3, strengthen regulatory framework for ensuring secure cyberspace ecosystem. 4, to create national and sectoral level 24/7 mechanism for obtaining strategic information regarding cyber threats. Number 5 is building up protecting of critical information through National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, that is NCIIPC, and then developing suitable indigenous security technologies. 7, integration of ICT products and services. 8, creating a workforce of 5 lakh professionals in the coming next 5 years. 9, providing fiscal benefits to businesses for adoption of standard security practices. 10, to enable protection of information while processes, handling, storage and transit so as to safeguard the privacy of citizens' data. After that, we have seen Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, What are their functions? Number 1, collect, analyze, and disseminate information on cyber security incidents. Number 2 is forecast cyber security incidents. Number 3, emergency measures for handling cyber security incidents. Number 4, coordination between different bodies. Number 5, issue guidelines, advisories, vulnerability notes, and white papers relating to information security practices, procedures to prevent and to respond and report cyber incidents. Number 7 is similar, anything which is such other similar functions. Now let's go to the next topic, cloud computing and different types of cloud computing. So we hear a lot about this term cloud computing. What is cloud computing? It's a method of delivery of computing services like servers, storage, databases, networking, software analytics, and more over the internet. Simply, it's a storage space over the internet. You have your Gmail, in that you have your drive, right? That is also a part of cloud computing. The companies offering these computing services are called cloud providers and typically charge for cloud computing based on service or usage. The types of cloud services are IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS, that is SaaS. Almost all cloud computing services can be conveniently divided into 3 categories. One is IaaS, that is infrastructure as a service. Number 2, platform as a service, that is PaaS. Number 3, software as a service, that is SaaS. So what is infrastructure as a service? It's the most basic category of cloud computing services. With this service, one can get the IT infrastructure like servers, virtual machines, storage, networks, operating systems from cloud provider on a rent basis. So you rent the computer infrastructure. Next is platform as a service. Refers to cloud computing services that supply on-demand environment for developing, testing, delivering, managing software applications. Platform as a service is designed to make it easier for developers to quickly create a web or mobile app without worrying about setting up or managing underlying infrastructure of servers, storage, network, or databases needed for development. Simply saying, it helps in developing a new program or an app. Next is third one, software as a service and cloud computing. It is a method of delivering software applications over the internet on demand and typically on a subscription basis. The cloud providers host and manage the software application. Users connect to the application over internet, usually with a web browser or on the phone or a tablet or a PC. Based on the services, cloud computing can be divided into 3 categories. Now look at based on the type of deployment. How can this cloud computing be categorized? Number 1 is public cloud. Number 2, private cloud. Number 3, hybrid cloud. Public cloud are owned and operated by third-party cloud service providers, which deliver their computing resources like servers, storage over the internet. In public cloud, all hardware, software, other supporting infrastructure is owned by and managed by the cloud provider. One can access these services and manage accounts using web browser. What is private cloud then? It refers to cloud computing resources used exclusively by a single business or an organization. That is, if you are working in a Dell or a Deloitte or a Gmail, they have their separate cloud services which are only accessible to their people or employees or their partners. A private cloud can be physically located on the company's on-site data center. Then let's look at a third one, that is hybrid cloud. Hybrid clouds combine public and private clouds bound together by technology that allows data and applications to be shared between them. Simply putting, it's a hybrid between public and private cloud. So now let's look at the uses of cloud computing. Cloud computing is highly cost effective and it eliminates the capital expenditure on buying hardware, software, setting up and running on-site data centers. So it reduces cost. The second use is cloud computing enables faster processing of data. This gives businesses a lot of flexibility and taking the pressure off the capacity planning. Number 3 is cloud computing helps in creating new apps, services, store, backup and recover data. This also helps in analyzing data for patterns and make predictions. Number 4, it also enables anyone to host websites and blogs, stream audio and video, and deliver specific softwares on demand. Number 5, it removes the need for carrying out the tasks like hardware setup, software patching, and other time consuming IT management. This further helps in diverting the human resources. Number 6, cloud computing makes data backup, disaster recovery, and business continuity easier and less expensive because data is always available on the cloud providers network. So let's recap. We have seen what is cloud computing, the types or categories of cloud computing, and then we have seen categories based on deployment and then uses of cloud computing. What is cloud computing? It's delivering of computing services like servers, storage, databases, software analytics, everything over the internet, simply put. So 3 different broad categories. One is infrastructure as a service, 2 platform as a service, and software as a service. Based on deployment, there are different types. One is public cloud owned by a private cloud provider. Number 3, private cloud, which is on company's on-site database. Number 3, it's a hybrid cloud. It's a hybrid between public and private clouds. After that, we have seen uses. It eliminates expenditure, fast processing, speedy recovery of data, reduces cost, and it reduces the tasks as well on repetitive tasks. And there is a data backup during disaster recovery. And it also facilitates in business continuity easily, and it's less expensive. So let's recap the entire class. We have started with Digital India. So what is the aim of Digital India? The purpose is to create a digitally empowered society and a knowledge economy. So it was launched in August 2014. Digital India, power to empower is the tagline. After that, we have seen the scope for Digital India, that is to prepare India for knowledge future and being transformative, that is IT plus IT is equal to IT for India tomorrow. India talent plus information technology is equal to India tomorrow. And 3, making technology the central for enabling change. After that, we have seen the various visions or the vision areas of Digital India. That is 1, infrastructure as utility to every citizen. After that, we have seen government services on demand. And third one is digital empowerment of citizens. Next, we have seen 9 pillars of Digital India. That is number 1, broadband highways. Number 2, universal access to mobile connectivity. Number 3, public internet access program. Number 4, e-governance. Number 5, e-Kranti. 7, electronics manufacturing. 8, IT for jobs. 9, early harvest programs. We have seen the methodology and approach of Digital India. What are the approach and methodologies? We have seen 9 points. First point is departments, ministries, spaces would fully leverage the common and supportive ICT infrastructure which is provided by Government of India. The next point is aligned with the principles of the ongoing project would be aligned with the principles of Digital India. Number 3, states would be given an opportunity or flexibility to identify inclusion additional state specific projects which are helpful for socio-economic needs. Number 4, e-governance would be promoted through central initiative. Number 5, any successful projects would be replicated proactively. Number 6, public-private partnerships has to be encouraged. Number 7, unique ID would be promoted for facilitated identification, authentication and delivery of benefits. Number 8, restructuring of NIC. Number 9, chief information officers, at least a minimum of 10 chief information officers would be appointed. Number 10, DITI or Department of Electronics and Information Technology would create necessary senior positions within the department for managing the program. What are these 10 points? These are the methodologies or approaches of Digital India program. After that, we have seen cyber threat, types of cyber threat. What is a cyber threat? they steal your confidential information from a government or an individual. Different types, we have seen cyber warfare, example North Korea on Sony Entertainment. Two, we have seen cyber crime, that is loss of identity theft and fraudulent financial transactions. After that, we have seen cyber terrorism and cyber espionage. What is cyber espionage? The method of using cyberspace to extract information related to reports of a country, organizations, or intellectual property information and from websites is called cyber espionage. After that, we have seen the rate of cybercrime in India or the level of cyber threats in India. As per the report of Internet Security Threat Report 2017, India has emerged as the third most vulnerable country after US and China. To present, it is at 6%. I mean, the global threats detected were at 6%. Earlier, it used to be 5%. So, and then in India, however, as per the report, India continues to be second most impacted by spams, bots, third most impacted by network attacks, and fourth most impacted by ransomware. As per National Crime Records Bureau, there were around 12,000 or 12,317 cyber crimes in 2016, of which UP has the highest, that is Uttar Pradesh, that has around 2,639 cases. Next, we have seen cyber threats, challenges to India and possible solutions. So we talked about cyber, how government websites are being attacked as a soft target. And then we have seen the modes of cybercrime. One is phishing, phishing, malware, and then email spam, bots, network attack, ransomware, crypto mining malware, or cryptojacking. And then we have seen the efforts of Government of India to tackle cyber threats. And we have seen National Cyber Security Policy 2013. So under this policy, what are the objectives of the policy? To create a secure cyber ecosystem, create a framework for secure policies, safeguarding national critical information infrastructure, develop suitable indigenous security technologies, validation of security measures, create a workforce of 5 lakh professionals in the next 5 years, provide fiscal benefits to businesses for adoption of standard security practices, safeguards the privacy of citizens' data as well. And next, we have seen Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, that is CERTIN. It's a functional organization under Ministry of MITI, under MITI. CERT has been designated under Section 70B of Information Technology Act 2008 to serve as a national agency to perform the following functions. Number 1, collect, analyze, disseminate information on cybersecurity incidents. Next is forecast and alert cybersecurity incidents, handling emergency situations, coordination, and issue guidelines, white papers on cybersecurity practices, and other related functions. After that, we have seen cloud computing. What is it? It's a method of delivery of computing services through internet, like server, storage, database, networking, software. Under that, we have seen different types, that is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. And then based on deployment, we have seen 3 types of cloud computing: public cloud, ownership is with the cloud provider; private cloud, it's at the company's database on-site center; and third, we have seen hybrid cloud. It is a combination of public and private clouds. And finally, we have seen the uses of cloud computing. It eliminates capital expenditure, faster processing, and then helps in building new apps in a less amount of time. It removes unnecessary tasks, and cloud computing makes data backup, disaster recovery, and business continuity easier. Brilliant. So we'll conclude our class today. Thank you for listening. If you have any queries or any doubts, or if you need any suggestions, mail us to biasacademy@gmail.com, or you can comment in the comment box below. Brilliant. Have a good day. Thank you.